Angela stepped out of her sleek black car, her heels clicking softly on the polished stone floor of the luxury restaurant's entrance. The evening air was cool and calm, and the soft glow of the restaurant's lights spilled warmly onto the sidewalk. She took a deep breath and smiled quietly to herself. This place was special, not just because of its beautiful decor or its expensive menu, but because Angela knew she had built it from the ground up. She was proud of what she had created. Inside, the restaurant buzzed gently with the sounds of people chatting, laughter, and the clinking of glasses and silverware. The tables were dressed with white linen cloths, and soft candlelight flickered in the center of each one. The walls were decorated with elegant art, and the polished wooden floor reflected the warm lights above. It was the kind of place where people came to celebrate, to enjoy a fine meal, and to make memories. Angela walked confidently through the room, her head held high but her steps quiet. She was dressed simply but with taste, a sleek dress that matched the evening style. Even though she was the owner of the entire restaurant chain, she wanted to blend in and enjoy the night without drawing attention to herself. Tonight was about relaxing with her friends after a long week. A waiter approached her with a polite smile. He looked young and nervous, carrying a small notepad and pen. "Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" he asked. "Yes, under the name Johnson," Angela replied softly. The waiter glanced at his tablet and nodded. "Right this way, please." He led her and her friends to a table near the window. From this spot, Angela could see the city, lights flickering in the distance. It was a beautiful view, one that she had insisted on including when designing the restaurant's layout. She settled into her chair and looked around. The place was busy but calm, filled with guests who seemed to enjoy the comfortable and elegant atmosphere. After a few moments, the waiter returned to take their order. Angela smiled politely as she looked over the menu. It was full of carefully selected dishes, many of which Angela had helped develop. The recipes came from chefs she trusted, and she made sure every ingredient was fresh and of the highest quality. "I'll have the grilled salmon with the lemon herb sauce, please," Angela said quietly. The waiter looked at her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you sure? That's a bit expensive, don't you think?" he said, his voice carrying a hint of doubt, almost like he didn't expect her to choose such a dish. Angela blinked, surprised by the comment. She looked at him carefully. The waiter was young, with a nervous smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Maybe he was just tired after a long day. She decided not to say anything and smiled again. "I'm sure," she replied simply. Her friends ordered their meals, and the waiter left to pass the orders to the kitchen. Angela felt a small flicker of discomfort, but told herself it was nothing. After all, everyone made mistakes, and she wasn't going to let one rude comment ruin her evening. As the night went on, Angela tried to enjoy herself. She laughed with her friends, told stories, and soaked in the atmosphere she had worked so hard to create. But every now and then, her mind drifted back to the waiter's strange reaction. Why had he seemed surprised by her order? Why had he doubted her choice? Angela was used to facing challenges. She had worked hard to build her career in a world where people often judged her before they got to know her. She knew the feeling of being underestimated, of having people make quick assumptions based on her appearance or her background. But she had also learned to rise above it, to keep her head held high, and prove her worth through her actions. 1 point. The waiter came back to the table to refill their water glasses. As he placed the bottle down, he muttered something under his breath, barely loud enough for Angela to hear. "You don't look like you belong here," he said. Angela froze for a moment. The words hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. She looked up at him, her eyes steady and calm. The waiter looked away quickly, realizing he had said too much. Her friends noticed the change and glanced at her with concern. Angela took a deep breath and smiled, trying to ease the tension. "It's all right," she said softly. "Everyone has their own ideas about where people should be. But sometimes those ideas are wrong." The waiter nodded quickly and hurried, away, leaving Angela to think. She wondered what had made him say that. Was it fear, ignorance, or something deeper? She didn't know, and she didn't want to waste her energy guessing. Instead, Angela focused on the things that mattered. The laughter at her table, the warm glow of the candles, the taste of the delicious food she had helped bring to life. This was her dream, and she would not let anyone's small-mindedness spoil it. As the night continued, Angela felt a quiet strength growing inside her. She realized that this moment, though uncomfortable, was an opportunity. An opportunity to show not just her friends but everyone around her that she belonged here, that she was the one who had created this space, who had made it possible for others to enjoy. She decided she would not stay silent. But for now, she would enjoy her evening, surrounded by the beauty she had worked so hard to build. The waiter returned to the table with a tray full of food. Angela's friends were chatting happily, but Angela's mind was still on the waiter's earlier comment. She tried to push it aside, focusing instead on the beautifully plated dishes, now in front of her. The waiter carefully set down the plates. When he reached Angela's salmon, he hesitated for a moment. His face looked unsure, and his hands shook slightly. Angela noticed this but said nothing. She had learned early in life that people sometimes showed nervousness when they did not know how to act around someone they didn't expect. "Is everything okay with your order?" Angela asked gently. The waiter nodded quickly, but did not meet her eyes. "Yes, ma'am, everything is fine." Angela took a bite of her salmon. It was cooked perfectly, just as she liked it. The flavors blended beautifully, the fresh lemon, the herbs, the tender fish. She smiled inside, proud of the meal her team had created. But outside, she kept her calm and polite. As the meal went on, the waiter came back several times. Each time, Angela noticed a change in his behavior. At first, he was cold and distant, as if he wanted to be somewhere else. Then, after a few minutes, his attitude shifted to awkward and uncertain. At one point, when Angela asked for a recommendation for dessert, the waiter seemed confused and unsure how to respond. Angela's friends noticed the waiter's strange behavior too. One of them whispered quietly, "Is he acting weird to you? Like maybe he doesn't want to be here?" Angela nodded slightly but did not answer out loud. She wanted to see how this would play out. After the main course, Angela asked for a glass of red wine. The waiter returned with the wine but spilled a few drops as he poured. He apologized quickly but looked embarrassed. Angela smiled kindly, hoping to ease his nerves. "Don't worry," she said softly. "It happens to everyone." But the waiter's embarrassment grew. As he stepped back, he whispered under his breath, loud enough for Angela to hear again, "I didn't expect someone like you to be here." Angela's heart tightened. This was not just a mistake anymore, it was a clear insult. The waiter was judging her, making unfair assumptions about who belonged in a place like this and who didn't. She looked at him calmly and said, "What do you mean by someone like me?" The waiter's face turned red. He stammered, trying to find words. I didn't mean to offend you. I was just surprised, that's all." Angela leaned forward slightly, her voice gentle but firm. "Why were you surprised?" He avoided her eyes, mumbling, "I don't know. It's just, people like you usually don't come here." Angela's friends gasped quietly. Angela felt a mix of anger and sadness but kept her voice steady. "People like me? What does that mean?" The waiter looked down, ashamed. "I didn't mean to be rude, I just thought—" "You thought wrong," Angela interrupted softly. "This place is for everyone, and I am the one who built this place. I am the owner." The waiter froze, his eyes wide. The room seemed to grow quiet for a moment. Angela's friend stared at the waiter, then at her, surprised by the sudden news. "I'm sorry," the waiter said, his voice shaking. "I had no idea." Angela nodded. "That's the problem. People often don't know. They judge before they understand." The waiter swallowed hard. "I'm really sorry for what I said and how I acted. I was wrong." Angela smiled kindly. "Thank you for apologizing. But this is more than just about me. It's about respect for all people, no matter where they come from or what they look like." The waiter nodded slowly. I understand. I want to do better. Angela's friends looked at her with pride. They had never seen her handle a difficult situation like this before. But Angela had faced many challenges in her life. She knew that change started with small moments like this. After the waiter left, Angela took a deep breath. She looked around the room and saw guests enjoying their meals, the soft music playing and the warm lights glowing. This was her creation, and she wanted it to be a place where everyone felt welcome and respected. She turned to her friends and smiled. Let's finish our meal and enjoy the night. As they ate dessert and talked quietly, Angela thought about the waiter's words and how they showed a deeper problem in the world. It wasn't just about one person being rude. It was about the ideas people carried inside them without even realizing it. Angela promised herself that she would use her position to make a difference. She would help her staff understand why respect mattered and why everyone deserved kindness. It wouldn't be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. That night, Angela left the restaurant feeling stronger. She had faced insult and judgment, but she had also shown grace and power. She was not just the owner of the restaurant. She was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of change. The waiter's mistake had opened a door. Now Angela was ready to walk through it and help others do the same. After Angela quietly revealed that she was the owner of the restaurant, the atmosphere at the table shifted. The waiter, who had been nervous and awkward, suddenly looked pale and lost. His eyes grew wide with surprise, and for a moment, he couldn't find the words to say. The other guests nearby had noticed the sudden change too. Some glanced over, curious about what was happening. Angela's friends exchanged surprised looks, but they trusted her to handle the situation. The waiter took a shaky breath and stepped back, almost as if he wanted to disappear. The manager of the restaurant, who had been watching the scene from a distance, quickly approached. Is everything all right here? The manager asked politely but firmly. Angela smiled warmly at him. Yes, everything is fine now. The waiter turned to the manager, still embarrassed. I didn't know who she was. I was wrong to say those things. The manager nodded. I understand. But it's important we treat every guest with respect. No exceptions. Angela stood up and looked the waiter in the eyes. I don't want you to be afraid to make mistakes. But I want you to understand how words can hurt. The waiter lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. I will do better. Angela's voice softened. That's all I ask. The manager then gently suggested that the waiter take a moment to calm down in the back room. The waiter nodded and walked away, still looking uneasy. Angela turned back to her friends, who were still watching her with admiration. Let's continue our evening, she said with a smile. As the waiter disappeared into the kitchen area, Angela's mind began to reflect on what had just happened. She thought about how easy it was for people to make quick judgments based on someone's appearance or background. She knew that the waiter had acted out of ignorance and fear, but she also knew that those feelings could cause real harm. She decided that this moment was not just about one rude waiter. It was a chance to start a bigger conversation, one that could help change the way people saw others. Angela wanted to use her position to teach her staff and her guests about respect and understanding. Later that evening, Angela met privately with the manager and some of the senior staff. She explained what had happened and shared her feelings. We have to do more, she said. This restaurant should be a place where everyone feels welcome. No one should ever feel judged or uncomfortable here. The manager agreed. We can start training programs to help our team understand diversity and how to treat every guest with kindness. Angela smiled. Yes, and it's not just about the guests. It's about creating a culture where respect is the foundation of everything we do. Over the next few weeks, Angela worked closely with her team. They organized meetings and workshops to discuss unconscious bias and the importance of empathy. Angela shared her own story and encouraged others to speak openly about their experiences. Slowly, the restaurant began to change. Staff became more aware of how their words and actions affected others. They learned to listen without judgment. and to treat every guest as if they were family. Angela noticed the difference in the way people interacted. The atmosphere became warmer, friendlier, and more inclusive. Guests commented on the kindness of the staff, and many returned again and again. One day, the waiter who had insulted Angela approached her. His face was different now, more confident and sincere. "I want to thank you," he said quietly. "You helped me see things differently. I'm sorry for how I acted." Angela smiled. "Thank you for being willing to learn. That takes courage." The waiter nodded. "I want to be a better person and a better waiter." Angela felt proud. This was exactly the kind of change she wanted to inspire. As time went on, Angela's story spread beyond the restaurant. Local news outlets heard about the incident and the positive steps she had taken afterward. People admired her grace and leadership. They saw how she had turned a painful experience into a powerful lesson for everyone. Angela used this attention to promote her message of respect and inclusion. She spoke at community events and shared her vision for a world where people were judged not by their skin color or background, but by their character and kindness. Despite the challenges, Angela remained hopeful. She knew that change took time, but she believed that every small step mattered. Her restaurant was no longer just a place to eat. It had become a symbol of what could happen when people chose to understand and support one another. One evening, as Angela looked around the dining room, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The guests were smiling and enjoying themselves. The staff moved with confidence and care, and the restaurant glowed with a warmth that went beyond the lights and decor. Angela realized that the journey she had started was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had turned a moment of insult into a chance for growth and hope, and she knew that with patience, kindness, and courage, she could continue to make a difference, one person at a time. After the waiter's apology, Angela felt a calm but firm sense of purpose growing inside her. She knew the incident had shaken him, but it had also opened an important door, a door for learning and change. Angela wanted to make sure this moment wasn't just forgotten or ignored. It needed to become a lesson for everyone in the restaurant. The next morning, Angela arrived early at the restaurant. The sunlight streamed softly through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The quiet calm of the empty dining room gave her a moment to think. She had planned to meet with the manager and the head of human resources to discuss what should happen next. Angela wanted the restaurant to be a place where respect and kindness were part of the everyday work, not just something talked about once or twice. She believed that everyone who worked there needed to understand why their words and actions mattered, not just for the guests, but for each other as well. When the manager and human resources head arrived, Angela greeted them warmly. She began by telling them what had happened the night before in detail, including the waiter's rude words and the surprise when she revealed her role as the owner. The manager looked serious. "I'm glad you told me. This is a chance to improve how we treat everyone and how our staff understand respect and inclusion." Angela nodded. "I want to start training programs, but not just one time. Ongoing workshops where staff can learn, ask questions, and grow. We need to talk openly about unconscious bias, the kind of feelings and thoughts people might not even realize they have. These can affect how they treat others." The human resources head agreed. "It's true. Sometimes people don't even know they are acting in a way that might hurt someone else. Education helps bring those feelings into the light so they can change." Angela smiled. "Exactly. And it's not only about the staff and guests. It's about creating a culture where respect is natural, where kindness is expected." Together, they planned a series of workshops that would begin within the next few weeks. Angela wanted to be personally involved. She planned to share her story and speak about the challenges she had faced as a Black woman in business. She hoped her experience would inspire others to be open and honest. When the training began, Angela stood in front of a room full of staff members. Some were young, some older. Some had worked at the restaurant for years and others had just started. She looked around the room, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I want to share a story from last week, one that reminded me why respect is so important. When I came here to have dinner, A waiter said something to me that hurt. It was a reminder that even in the best places, people can feel judged. She paused, letting her words sink. But that moment was also an opportunity to learn and grow. That's what I want for all of us, to grow together. Angela spoke about the meaning of unconscious bias, explaining that sometimes people act in ways they don't fully understand. The good news is that we can change. We can choose to see each other clearly and kindly. That takes courage, but it is worth it. Over the next several sessions, the staff learned about respect, empathy, and kindness. They shared stories about times they felt judged or misunderstood. They talked about how to listen better and how to treat everyone with dignity. Angela noticed changes in the way her team worked. People smiled more often. They helped each other and took care to treat guests with genuine warmth. The restaurant felt lighter, friendlier, and more welcoming. One afternoon, the waiter who had insulted Angela approached her. His face was calm and sincere. "I want to thank you," he said quietly. "Your words and the training helped me see things differently. I'm sorry for what I said." Angela smiled warmly. "Thank you for being brave enough to change. That's what makes this place special." The waiter nodded. "I want to be better, not just for the guests, but for myself." Angela felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was the kind of change she wanted to see. Not forced, but coming from inside, a true understanding of respect and kindness. Outside the restaurant, Angela's story began to inspire others. Local community groups invited her to speak. She shared how small moments could become powerful chances to teach and learn. She talked about building bridges, breaking down walls, and choosing hope over fear. Her message spread beyond the restaurant. People admired her strength, grace, and leadership. They saw how she had turned a hurtful experience into a bright opportunity for change. But Angela knew the work was never finished. She believed respect and kindness were journeys, not destinations. Every day was a chance to grow, to listen, and to understand a little more. One quiet evening, as Angela closed the restaurant, she stood in the empty dining room and looked around. The soft lights cast gentle shadows on the walls, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. She thought about the night of the insult and how far things had come since then. The challenges were still there, but now there was hope. Hope that the restaurant was more than just a place to eat. It was a place to belong. Angela smiled to herself, feeling proud and ready for whatever came next. She knew her story was part of something bigger, a story about respect, change, and the power of kindness to heal and build. Some time had passed since that evening when Angela was insulted by the waiter who didn't know she was the owner of the restaurant. Since then, a lot had changed inside the restaurant. What started as a painful moment had turned into something powerful and meaningful. Angela had always dreamed of running a restaurant that felt warm and welcoming to all. She didn't just want great food and beautiful decoration. She wanted something deeper, a place where people of all backgrounds could come together and feel respected, seen, and cared for. Now, when Angela walked through the restaurant, she felt proud. She saw her staff smiling, helping one another, and treating each guest with kindness. She heard laughter and friendly voices. The air inside the restaurant felt different, lighter, more joyful. The change wasn't just on the surface. It had started to grow inside everyone. One day, while Angela was reviewing the lunch menu in her office, her assistant knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "He says he's from a local school." Angela looked up with interest. "Please send him in." A young man entered the room holding a folder and smiling politely. "Hello, Ms. Angela. My name is Jordan. I work at Rose Hill High School. I heard about what happened here a few weeks ago. Your story really touched a lot of people, especially our students." Angela invited him to sit. Jordan continued, "Our school is working on a program about kindness, respect, and leadership. When we asked the students who they'd like to hear from, your name came up more than once." Angela raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Me? Why?" Jordan smiled. "Because you turned something hurtful into something hopeful. You didn't get angry or shout. You taught. You led by example. And that's what our young people need to see. Angela felt both surprised and humbled. "I'd be honored to speak with your students," she said softly. A week later, Angela stood in front of a room filled with high school students. Some were sitting up straight, eager to listen. Others leaned back, arms crossed, but still watching. Angela smiled. She remembered being young and unsure, trying to understand the world and her place in it. She began by sharing her story, how she had built the restaurant from the ground up, how she faced challenges along the way, and how she had been mistaken for someone who didn't belong in her own place. "When the waiter judged me," she said, "he didn't know who I was. But that's the point. We don't always know who someone is. We don't know what they've been through or what they've built." Angela's voice stayed calm and strong. "That's why respect matters. Because every person you meet is carrying a story you haven't heard." The room grew very quiet. Angela looked around at the students. "You have the power to lift someone up with your words, or tear them down. It's your choice, but what you say and how you treat others can shape their day, and sometimes even their future." After her talk, many students came up to her to say thank you. Some shared their own stories of feeling judged or misunderstood. Angela listened to each one with care. She offered encouragement and reminded them that their voices too had power. On the way back to the restaurant, Angela thought about how far her journey had come, from being insulted in her own dining room to standing on a school stage as a voice of hope. She had turned pain into purpose. Back at the restaurant, Angela had an idea. She called a staff meeting and shared it with everyone. "I want to do something new," she said. "Let's hold a special night each month called Voices of Respect. We'll invite people from the community, teachers, students, artists, workers, everyone. They can come here and share stories, poems, music, anything that celebrates kindness and courage." The staff clapped and nodded excitedly. They loved the idea. Soon, the first Voices of Respect night arrived. The dining room was full, not with the usual guests, but with people from all walks of life. There was a small stage in one corner, and the room glowed with soft lights and a gentle feeling of togetherness. One by one, people stepped forward to share. A teenage girl read a poem about finding her voice. A school teacher spoke about learning to listen to her students. A musician played a song he had written about his grandmother's strength. Angela sat at a table near the front, her heart full. She saw smiles, tears, laughter. She saw people leaning in, nodding, clapping. She saw a community becoming stronger through simple stories of kindness and hope. Then, to everyone's surprise, the same waiter who had once made the mistake walked up to the stage. The room quieted. He cleared his throat and began. "A while ago, I said something I regret. I judged someone without knowing her. I hurt her with my words, but instead of pushing me away, she helped me learn. She gave me a second chance." He looked over at Angela. "Because of her, I now try harder. I listen more. I think before I speak. And I want to thank her, not just for forgiving me, but for leading me." The room erupted in applause. Angela stood and hugged him. It was a moment of truth, forgiveness, and growth. A moment no one there would forget. The evening ended with soft music, warm drinks, and heartfelt conversations. As guests began to leave, many came to Angela to thank her for her strength, her kindness, and for starting something so meaningful. Outside, the night was cool and quiet. Angela stepped out into the fresh air and looked up at the stars. She felt peaceful. The restaurant had grown beyond her original dream. It was no longer just a business. It had become a space for learning, healing, and unity. Angela knew there would always be challenges. People would still make mistakes. But now her team had the tools and heart to handle them with grace. They had learned to look deeper, to listen better, and to lead with love. As she stood there under the night sky, Angela smiled softly. This was not just the end of a story. It was the beginning of many more.